Welcome to Mr. Harrison's Power Director Tutorials. In this tutorial you will learn some of the basic features of Power Director 12. Specifically, we will be looking at how you can bring media into your project, how clips can be edited in the timeline, and how you can add titles to your movie, and finally how you can compress your movie into an MP4 file. Let's get started. The first step is to take all the videos and music that you plan to use for your project and get them organized in a directory. I have everything that I'm going to need for my project here on my desktop in this media folder. When you open this folder, you can see that I've gone ahead and preemptively organized things according to the order that I think that I'm going to need them in my project. This isn't necessary, but for bigger projects it'll really help you keep organized. You can see in my project I'm going to have a couple different chapters on driving to the fish, blowing up the pack rafts, paddling to the fish, and then catching a tarpon. And I've also figured out some music that I'm going to use for the project. Once your media is organized, you can go ahead and open Power Director. It has this icon here. This is Power Director 12. Some of the older machines have Power Director 10. Which isn't nearly as stable, so don't use that. You want to use the full feature editor, and you'll notice that when you open up Power Director, they give you some JPEGs and MP4s to use in your project, but I'm not going to need any of those. And so to reduce the clutter, I'll highlight them and then I'll right click. And you'll notice that I actually have two different options here. If I never think I'm going to use these again, I can delete them from the disk, but they might be helpful at some other point in time. So for right now, I'm just going to remove them from the library. Now I'm ready to bring in the stuff that I'm going to need for my project. I can go ahead and click on this little Import Media button in the top, and I have the choice of either bringing in individual files or my whole folder that I have on my desktop. So I navigate to my desktop and go down until I find my media folder and select that, and there you go. I have all of the clips, hopefully, that I'm going to need for my movie. If you're doing this project with your students using Power Director, you're going to really want to emphasize the fact that their media must be collected in the location, directory, or folder before they import it into their project. If they don't do this, they'll go back to their Power Director files and their projects will be missing the media that they were hoping to use. At this point, it's also a good idea to go ahead and save the project. Go to the File menu, Save Project, and we're going to go ahead and save it in the same location as where I have all of my other video clips in the media folder. This is a decent convention that usually keeps things pretty organized, so I'll go ahead and go in there, and I'm going to call this Tarpon Sequence. And now I'm good to go. Now that my media has been imported, I can start editing my project. You can see underneath here that Power Director has a couple different tracks where you can drag and drop the video clips that you want to edit. I'm just going to be using this first track here, and what I'll do is start working on the edit for the driving sequence of my movie. So I can just grab a clip and drag it down here in the timeline. I can do this individually, or if I want, I can highlight and shift click and take a series of clips and drag them down. So maybe I'll just take the first 3 clips here and work with those. Another thing that's really helpful to know is that here the clips look kind of bunched up and you won't be able to see the breaks very easily. Just by grabbing on the timeline here and dragging, I can stretch things out a little bit, and I lost this clip off to the left, so I can just grab the bar and scroll back over here to the left. So I'd kind of like to see what I have to work with. So I can play this clip, and it's not too bad. It's probably a little bit longer than what it needs to be. A general rule of editing is that you want to have a clip last not longer than 2 or 3 seconds. If it does last longer than that, then the audience tends to get a little bit bored. So This looks like it's right around in that time frame. Maybe in the interest of simplicity, I'll just keep that one how it is. Let's go ahead and see how it plays with the next one. If I just hit play right now, then it's going to stop once it gets through this highlighted blue area. So if I want it to continue playing on to the next clip, what I can do is I can click off the timeline, and that'll just ensure that when I hit play, still shows the first clip, but then it shows the next clip where I'm sitting here in the car. And here you can see there's a lot of dead space where I'm just sitting there with the door open, and that's really dumb. So I'm going to show you how you can edit that. Let's go back here, highlight this clip, and we can kind of play through. The door's open, it's boring, boring, boring. Right around in here maybe is where I would like to pause this clip, and I'm going to make a split right there. So I come over here, I hit the split button, and you can see that that took that clip and it broke it up into two pieces. I'm going to get rid of this piece. So I highlight it. I'm going to hit the delete key on my keyboard. You can also do some right clicking and delete that way if you want to, but I find it easier just to hit the delete key on my keyboard. So when I hit delete on my keyboard, you'll notice that this dialog comes up. What do I want to do? Well, I want that clip to go away. I don't want a gap there. Actually, I want the gap to be closed. And I want everything that's to the right of this clip to slide over to the left so that it's a seamless transition. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove and take all the timeline clips and bring them to the left. So that has that effect right there. So let's see how that looks. I can drag the scrubber here and play that little sequence. Or I am going to the car, cut in motion, turn the ignition, and that's actually not too bad. Maybe that last little sequence with the ignition didn't need to be quite as long as it was, so I'll just highlight that clip, bring the scrubber there, split there, and take off that last little bit. It might not seem like much, but you want the movie to move along at a quick pace. Okay, at this point I've finished my driving sequence. You can see all those clips that are labeled with a 1, and I've dragged in and edited my pack wrapped inflating clips, and I even have a nice little segment here of Katie paddling through a little mangrove channel. And what I want to do then is move into the sequence where I'm actually doing some boating and fishing. And so because I'm organized here, I see that my 4 clips are ready to start coming in, and I drag down this first little POV from the pack raft. Obviously there's a problem here. Conveniently enough, Power Director has a fix for this. I can rotate this clip 180 degrees by clicking on the Power Tools button, and this opens up quite a few options for you. Actually, there's a lot of good stuff in here, but if you look down at the bottom, you'll see that you can rotate the video. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select that, and it'll take it through rotations of 90 degrees. So I obviously need to do that twice, doesn't matter which direction I go, and there it goes, I've got it righted again. And there you go. So that's how you can rotate clips. Up to this point, we've been doing all of our work here in the media room. This allows us to see all the clips that we're working with. But now I'm done with all of my editing, at least of my video clips, and what I want to do is add some titles to my project. So I drop down here and I click on the title room icon. Takes me to this screen. What I usually like to do is just grab this simple default template and drag it down into the timeline. I want to title at the beginning of my movie, so I just kind of line it up there and drop it, and it gives me some choices, and what I want to do is put it in here and then slide all the clips over to the right. So I do this. Now I'm not super excited about this blue on black title, and I don't really like the font. So what I can do is either double click this title, or I can just go up here and accomplish the same thing by clicking on the modify button, which brings me to this screen. So now you'll see that over to the left of the title there's a bunch of different parameters that you can adjust. I recommend to students that they do white on black titles. You'll notice it with most professional productions, this is the convention. Of course, they always want to use like a million different fonts and colors, and it ends up being really busy. But so I can just click on this, and I'll go ahead and make the titles white. 24 is probably a little bit too big for the title I have in mind, so I'll go ahead and shrink that down maybe to an 18. And I'm not super excited about the courier. It's not really bold enough. So maybe I'll go in here and use something like, oh, I don't know, maybe some Arial, and then I'll be able to make it bold also. Okay, so then you can just highlight the text, and my project is going to be called and I'd like people to know that this is and to move your title around, all you can do is grab the edge of your box there and get it positioned, and you can center your text within inside the box there. Try to get things the way that you like them. Maybe I'll make this a little bit larger, go up to a 24 point, recenter, return down one time. That's probably good enough. So I can go ahead and I can click save right now, and that'll give me a title that works for my movie. But something that Katie likes to do, which is a good idea, is to go ahead and click save as, and what that'll do is it'll put this particular format title into the options for future titles that I might make. So if I go save as, we'll just call this basic title, and save that in my project. Let's go ahead and take a closer look at that title that I just added. If I go and I highlight it and then click on duration, you can see that it's set to run for 10 seconds. This is too long for a title. 4 seconds is probably a reasonable amount, so I can just highlight this, type in, highlight this, type in a 4, change this back to 00, click OK, and you can see that that shortened up the title. The only other thing I need to do in terms of titles is add some credits at the end. So if I scroll down, you can see that here's the basic title that I'd saved into my templates because I knew that I might need this combination of fonts and colors for the rest of my credits. So go ahead and drag that down here. Again, to make changes to this, I can either double click on it or click modify. I'll just go ahead and double click this time. And that's probably good enough. Center it up, click save, and there you go, I'm done with my titles. Before moving on, there's one other thing that I should show you about credits. It's quite possible that students won't save the template into their options for titles, but they still should be maintaining consistency in terms of their fonts and colors. So one way to do that very easily is to go ahead and highlight the beginning credit that I have here, and I'm going to right click that and copy it, and then I'm just going to go over here and paste it in at the end of my project. So if I right click and go paste, it's giving me some options, and the reason that that's kind of screwed up is because you can see here that my scrubber actually isn't at the end of my movie. To get it actually at the end instead of cutting into the middle of it, I can go ahead and click there, and I can just scroll all the way to make sure that I'm at the end. Now, if I right click or hit Control V, I can paste in the title there, and then I can go in and make it say what I want it to say. Now I'm going to add music. To make that happen, I have to go back, get out of the title room, which I do by going up here to the media room. You can see that this gets me back to where I had all my clips, and more importantly, where I had my music file. So what I want to do is grab the music file and drag it down into the timeline, but I don't want to put it in this first space here because that's where the audio is that I have with my video clips. So what I'll do is I'll just go down to track 2, and you can see that it wants to go right into the audio slot. The spot above that is for video. So I drop it in. Looks like it's going to be a little bit too long for my movie, so the first thing I might want to do is split it, shorten things up. I don't want it to end right when my credit ends. I want to go a little bit of music past that perhaps. So I'll go ahead and make a split a little bit past. I'll delete that extra. And the only other thing that I'm going to show right now is just how you can real quickly fade into the music and then fade out of the music at the end. So in order to make that happen, you go over here to the audio mixing room, and I want to make sure that my clip is highlighted, and I want to make sure I am all the way at the beginning of my movie. And you can see that we're allowed to adjust some of the features of Audio 2, and it's called Audio 2 because it's in track 2. So this little button right here will allow me to put a little fade in, and then if I go towards the end of my project, what I want to do is put the scrubber where I want my fade out to start. And you can see that now this thing is an option, and I can fade out, and maybe I'll start fading the music out about halfway through my final credit. That should give you a nice little ending. And so you can see also with these little adjustment dots here that the volume is fading out at the end and fading in at the beginning. And you can also adjust those dots manually if you wish as well. At this point, I'm done with all of the editing for my project. But if I wanted to show it to anybody or share it with anybody, they would have to have Power Director software to actually be able to see what I've done. So in order to get it into a format that everybody can see, I'll go on the top here and I'll choose the option to produce this movie. So if I go ahead and choose produce, I have a bunch of different options about what format I want to save it in. MP4 is kind of the industry standard for video files, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to choose that. And once I choose MP4, I want to go down here and specify where my project is going to be saved. So right now it's going to go somewhere deep in a Power Director directory, somewhere on my C drive. I don't want that, so I'm going to click here. I'm going to choose to just save it onto the desktop. By default, the movie is going to be called Produce, but I probably would want to change it to something else. Maybe I'll call it Mexico. Save that. And the last thing that I want to do is click Start. When I do that, you can see that it's taking the movie and rendering it, compressing all the files into one neat little package. This concludes the Power Director Basics tutorial. Hopefully it was helpful. My finished product looks like this.
You just threw your wad in the water. Did you just throw that in the water? Oh my God. laughing so hard I can't